I've been in the fitness industry for a long time. It's been 14 or 15 years, and I want to tell you a little bit of a story, and I think it'll help us get to an end result of just understanding who we are as human beings, right? And so one of the biggest challenges I've had as a trainer over the years has been convincing my clients to eat clean, right? Clean dieting, which is not a fad. It's not something you sign up for a few months and then you're off. Like, when I say diet, I just mean something that turns into a lifestyle, and it's not a quick fix, It's something that allows you to shift the way you relate to food so that you never have to go back to relating to food the same way again. And the easiest part of that, or I would say the foundation of this process of learning to eat clean, is one simple, I think it's a simple phrase anyway, but in my client's mind, it's never that simple. It is just eat clean. And they go, wait, what does that mean? What is eating clean? And I'll say, okay, I'm going to assume that you, like most Americans, you really enjoy bread, you really enjoy cheese, you really enjoy sugar, and if you can find a way to get those into a beverage, you will. So there's beer and and all these other ways we create these new foods, Anyway, and let's just take Coca-Cola, for example, right? There's it's loaded with sugar. I think it has a caramel coloring, maybe, and maybe potassium sorbate is an additive or preservative of some sort. But if I just said, let's strip all that is impure from a Coca-Cola, so all the ingredients I just listed, we would take out of it, and we would just have water, right? We just have water. It's a simple drink that comes right out of the sky and runs downstream, and it's beautiful, and in its purest form, it is the best thing for us, Yeah, and you can add a lime or some lemon, and it's fantastic.
So on the way to our faucets, it gets corrupted some more.
It collects some things on the way. So you may have to purify it again, or boil it, or do something. And so water is the pure form of Coca-Cola. And in fact, all beverages, water is the pure form of every beverage. And so, I wake up in the morning, I have about 12 ounces of water with a splash of, warm 12 ounces of water with a splash of apple cider vinegar. And then the rest of my drinking is just pure water or some kind of herbal tea, green tea or lemon tea or peppermint tea or something like that. And I may add some honey in there. So then another process I go through with my clients, besides talking about just pure water, but ultimately it's food. It's how do we get the purest form of the food itself. It's, again, take away the cheese, take away the bread, just have the chicken breast. Season it up nicely, and try to make sure even your seasonings are just a pure form of that thing, And your taste buds will have to go through an adjustment period because you've become accustomed to lots of sodium and all these other things that you just enjoy, right? And so there's a transition period, but if you stick with it, it will work, and you'll be able to simplify your life. You'll spend less money on food. You might begin to recognize the joy in just cooking at home. And suddenly you'll go, oh, I don't need that anymore. I just don't even need that, And then temptations arise. Someone invites you to a birthday party or a cookout, and then there's bread and cheese everywhere,
And desserts.
and cookies and whatnot. And that's fine, right? It's like, enjoy it, have control over it. Don't let it have control over you. Okay. So then the point is, they usually come to see me because they want to slim down. They want to lose weight. They want to feel better. And so we do focus on mainly feeling better. It's like, yeah, we want to be able to wake up in the morning and not feel groggy and tired and make it through our day without that huge crash in energy. And we want to make it all the way through evening feeling like we've got some kind of vibrant energy about us. And but to start off our program, we're going to weigh in. Let's see how much you weigh. How much weight are you carrying? So I get them on the most accurate scale I can, and I tell them to take off their shoes. Essentially, I'll send the men into the men's locker room and the women into the women's room, and I'll say, if you feel comfortable in there, take everything off so we get the most accurate picture of your weight, because you're carrying around clothing, right? And they all weigh something. So I would assume I'm maybe wearing about 5 to 7 pounds of clothes right now, okay? So how do we strip away from the body, right? It's like, okay, your glasses come off, your hat comes off, your shirt comes off, your shoes come off, and then we have what's most organic about the body itself. Just like that Coca-Cola, we stripped away, and the most organic thing is the water itself. Okay, so that's fine. Then there's the mental side of being human, right? It's not just how we ingest and what we clothe ourselves with, it's how we think. And how do we get to the most pure form of the mind? And that's a challenging thought because, well, I'll get there, but let's talk about the mind and how to strip the unnecessary things away, the things that have been added. For example, memory. Whoa, okay, let's talk about memory. I want to say memory's been added to the mind because there had to have been an experience that came to me that wasn't there before, and that created an experience that was also not there before, and that's where memory begins, out of something that was not there before, right? So that means there was a time and place where this person you're seeing here and now by the name of Lance had, I would assume, no memory whatsoever, right? We're going to imagine me as a young baby and assume that babies don't have some memory that obviously we couldn't know if they had it or not, right? So that place of the human being before anything becomes attached mentally. There's no memory, there's no attachment to a name, there's no attachment to an idea of family or racial identity or what neighborhood I live in or how old I am or male, female. All of these things get attached onto our mental disposition over time, and we become conditioned from this height, right? Very small, adorable people, and we're conditioned and conditioned and conditioned, and now we fit well into society. Let's just take a couple minutes, and I'm going to try not to say a lot in 2 minutes, but I just want you to imagine yourself, and maybe here at this moment, think about all the layers that exist to you and pulling them away so you just get back to that original mind which you are. Okay? Okay, that's about 2 minutes, I think. Did anyone feel like they were actually able to accomplish that? Like you felt a centered place and there's just a calm and a peace and nothing else is really there? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Yeah?
Close.
Yeah? Close? Okay. Okay. You know, what if we could remain as that and still go about our day? So imagine, here we go. We're going to stand up and the meeting's over. And now we have to engage with the attachments again because that's how we navigate the world. Can I engage with those attachments without without identifying myself with them? Meaning they're there. They become tools I can use to navigate the world. But I now have a sense, because of what I just learned in those 2 minutes, that I am not those things. I am not this license that I'm being asked for. Like, I have to give a license if I'm in a band and I play at bars and restaurants around town and I have to show a license before I can enter, I am not the license. The license has a birth date and a name and an address and a picture and all of those things are labels that in some way represent or point to this person. And I get to be on stage and play an instrument and do this performance. But when I leave there, I'm no longer the performer anymore, right? That was just an act for 2 hours of the evening. Things at work are similar, right? I go to a certain place to do a certain thing, but when I leave there, I don't take it home with me. In fact, I'm quite happy to leave it there, and I get to just be me. Hopefully, I get to be me. Hopefully, I'm not confused or trapped in a way of existing where I'm constantly carrying around all these other elements that I have to engage in. But in the moment that we just had, where I just took a couple minutes and I went within and things were quiet and things were peaceful, that's where I feel like I'm the most myself. I'm being the true me right then and there, because there's so much just peace, and suddenly I had a smile and there was no reason to smile except that I was just present in the moment. And right now, in this moment, everything's lovely. Everything's wonderful, But if memory begins to come to me, maybe things aren't so lovely right here and right now. Or if I begin to project into the next hour too far, suddenly things are not so lovely,
Or past.
Oh, yeah. memories are tough, you know. We hold a lot within ourselves, and it seems to me that even the way I think of the future, the things I project, are only based in information that I hold about things I've experienced in the past. It's like my view of the future is because of the way I have filtered or interpreted things or events that have happened to me, or I was present and something took place, and then I develop either anxieties or stress, fear, depression. What else? Just maybe just a general sense of I guess it just is a very general sense of fear. And there's a range in fear, right? It's like, well, I could just be afraid of the bee that flew by. Like, that's a small thing, but for a minute there I was jolted. And then there are the larger things that can come up in a person's mind. But what I'm seeing, and I think we all can see, is that the fear is still just something that I latch onto. It's an experience that isn't even actually real. It's just something that's in my mind, and I can take those layers off and just get to the foundation of who I am. And I think one of the most beautiful things about knowing that foundation is that the foundation is in you, and it's in you, and it's in you, and it's in you, and it's in you. That same place of just simple presence, I like to call it. It's just so simple, right? It's not complicated. It's not hard. It only took 2 minutes to go there. I gave a little bit of some storyline so we would kind of know what we were up to, and that did. But other than that, now you can take that story with you anywhere about getting back to the purest form of water, and then getting to the most organic version of the body, right? Those are just simple examples of what we hope to do with our minds, which is in some way connected to the heart and affects everything we do and how we show up in our groups. So we were talking about the governance team here, and getting the community to chime in on things that are happening and interacting. And what if this group of people here, what if we were multiplied times 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, and that many people come into a space knowing that foundational self, the true self, and said, okay, let's now have a governance team meeting. I'm really curious how that meeting would go when the purest form of the person can show up. Or maybe better said, we come with our identities, right? The identification card. We come with our identities, but when we sit down and have this meeting, we're going to strip that away and just recognize that we are really pure beings. We are beautiful beings. We are therefore also very powerful. We are highly intelligent, each and every one of us. We are uniquely gifted and have very unique talents. And as a community, there's nothing that we can do. There's not one thing that if we put our minds to, we couldn't accomplish. And if it weren't for each and every one of you, I would really be in trouble without you. That's really how it boils down, And the beautiful thing about that is my history, my background, where I came from, how I was educated, what ethnic group they might ask me to check off on some form. has no power over the simple fact of just how beautiful we are, and how the fact that we are diverse is something that's very beautiful and something that allows us to accomplish incredible things. If everyone were like me, oh, that's interesting. I want to, like, I should spend more time thinking about what the world might look like, or even what my neighborhood might look like if everyone were like me. It wouldn't be the things that need to get done wouldn't get done, because I'm only interested in doing a couple things, but the list of things are quite long. And that's where you come in. You are probably geared or talented and gifted, educated to take care of some of those other things that I have no background or skill in, or even desire to touch. Any thoughts?
I think it's very hard to do all the stripping away when you gave the 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I didn't have enough time to even get. There
Okay.
were so many layers of what you are.
Wow.
It's
Right.
like, okay, that one goes away and re-identified, and then there's,
Right.
the longer you live, I think the more old. So I've got multiple layers there.
Right. So you're saying that you wish there had been more time to strip away more layers because there's so many.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because it was like, okay, now you got done that decade, okay, but then you got the next layers of this decade.
Well, my experience with that was, no matter how far I go back in time, there were external influences on creating me. Even if I go right back to my birth,
Right.
there were things that happened at my birth that still affect me today. So
Wow.
instead of going back in time, I meditate daily anyway. So I'm able to do it that way in the here and now. I let go of time and I let go of space. Like meditation, then I can get to my pure self.
Gotcha.
But I don't do it with a time machine. I do it
Gotcha.
where I am here and now.
Right.
It helps me to do it that way.
Okay. So just to echo that back to you, you're saying it's beneficial for you to just, in the moment, right now, you can get to that pure state almost instantly and not have to worry so much about time or going back in time.
Right.
That in and of itself can be a distraction
It's a
for you.
potential. I'm not saying I always get there.
Sure.
It's a potential.
Sure. Yeah, even time, I guess, is one of those attachments on the mind, because at least it seems like there are many ancient scriptures from a variety of places around the world that seem to indicate there was a time and space before time and space as we know it existed. And so we look at this clock and it spins, but even that is some kind of construct that we were intelligent enough to design, right? So there must have been something before that. Yeah. Good point. There was something you wanted to say.
Where I went was when I was stripping the layers. For some reason, it felt easy when I went back to being a baby and when I didn't have any knowledge of this or that, and I just felt, because I luckily was in a loving home, so where I went with that was like I felt loved, even, from a newborn, or even in the womb, loved, safe, happy. And so that, to me, was my place.
Gotcha. Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
So you felt a sense or an awareness of peace and love as a baby, and even in the womb, you were just able to tune into that. Wonderful. You know, I don't remember. It may be, I want to say Dr. John Gottman. I could be wrong, but I'm sure there's lots of research on memory that is formed in the womb. I know I've heard some lectures on it in the past. It's just been a while. We, especially these days with the advent of certain technologies, I guess I'll call them, we don't always observe the possibility that the fetus is having a real experience, you know. And
definitely feel that they do.
Sure.
But that's
Yeah. I remember when I first heard my son's heartbeat, and I think if I remember right, oh, that was a long time ago. Maybe he was 1.25 inches long or something like that. So, you know, a heartbeat. That says enough for me, you know.
And my daughter's 40. So I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So, my question is, I'm kind of like Roger. I meditate, so for me, I just go to that place and it feels great. And I always feel it's sort of like getting a brain massage. You know, you just feel better when you've done it for. The longer, the better. But the question that I have is how to retain that, or how to tap into that when sort of the vicissitudes of life occur, which they do. I mean, that's sort of like
Good question.
a challenge, and that part of it, I don't know if anybody here has any ideas or thoughts on that, but that's the hard part for me, is to try to not let, like, I need a filter or somehow to be able to just let that stuff in me like a shield.
Well,
Yeah.
Sure. That's a really good
Shields are up.
question. So,
I'm inside the shield.
for those of you who are listening but perhaps can't hear everyone, the question was something like, it began with the statement, I know how to find a state of awareness and pure peace. I feel comfortable doing that on a daily basis, but life happens. So how do I maintain that when outer circumstances are not so peaceful? Essentially, that was the question. And you know, goodness, I really do think, I can speak from experience. And so therefore I have to say, I know there's a way to enter into environments and not become overly involved in the environment that's happening. But it starts with me just knowing that practice within myself, which is, if we had said, let's do our quiet practice for, instead of 2 minutes, let's turn it to 20 minutes. Suddenly, because I've now bound it to a time frame, there will begin mind chatter. And now the presence or the feeling or the understanding of peace becomes a challenge, because thoughts will come and go. And yeah.
That's the main one. Is it time yet?
Right, is it time yet? And I like to think of thoughts like cars passing by. They come and go, but just because the car passes by doesn't mean I have to get involved and go, what's the license plate number? What color is it? Who's driving?
Why is it so loud?
Why is it so loud? I can let the car go and let them come and go, and I'm still right here. That place, that space of quiet and peace and presence is still here, no matter what's buzzing around. And there's a really great story where, let's see, it's another one of those ancient stories out of the Bible where there was a storm that came over the lake. It may have been the Sea of Galilee, and it was such a violent storm that the students of Christ were all in an uproar, like, oh, it's, how can he still be sleeping? They're, get the sails down, and all this commotion, and he's sleeping. And that's that pure state. It's like the world could be flipping upside down, but can I maintain my peace and my presence? That one person that might agitate me the most, can I maintain my state of pure awareness? Can I hold on to that? Because really and truly, that's all I have. I don't need to get involved with that other energy that is just coming and going. That has really helped me with what you're getting at. It's like the only space I can control is this space right here. And if I'm feeling out of control, it's because I've attached myself to something outside of me, outside of who I am. Any other thoughts on?
My challenge is when I started getting in a conversation with somebody, then I lose that centeredness. Because then I'm thinking about responding and listening, and it's hard for me to stay there when I'm in a conversation, especially if it's a conversation involving any fear or anxiety. Then I really lose it.
Right.
I have a tendency to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying if the difficulty is when you're in conversation, and especially if it's one that has something uncomfortable involved, something emotional, then staying in that peaceful state of mind is hard to do. Yeah. The mind is interesting. It's a complicated issue, right? We have the brain, which is like this, almost like a central processing unit of this three-dimensional experience that we're having, and that's where the ego gets involved. Is in this thinking and this processing and dividing. We don't always divide purely. If we can, we see everything's beautiful. Pure division means, oh, I appreciate the sun for the shadow it can create. Like, this is just part of the experience. There's no judgment in seeing the sun and the shadow, or night and day, or green and brown. Like, sure, I can divide and discern all of this and just appreciate the diversity that is all in this one experience called life. I can do that with my brain, and if I can maintain that state of peace, that is pure mind, I may call it. But we talked about all of the attachments that we can become involved with, and that's where my egoic self begins. It's now I'm attached to whatever it might be. I'm attached to my pair of shoes. Don't step on my shoes. I have a problem. Or say my name the right way. That is a form of attachment, right? That can be really important to most of us. Oh my gosh, the list of egoic mental things we go through is it's a really long list. It can be anything. It can be everything. But just like pure water and pure body weight, there is pure mentality, pure mind, and it's peaceful. And as I've been studying Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek for a very, very long time. I really enjoy retranslating portions of the Hebrew scriptures, and they have, in English we miss a lot of what I think is there, but it definitely, it's
Yeah.
the message really points to pure mind over and over again, but in these highly creative ways that we've turned into religious jargon. For example, it's a good example of religious jargon that we've just taken the wrong direction. When the original hearers, Hebrew ears in the ancient times, heard kingdom of God, they didn't think what you and I might be thinking right now. Because our English world and Western mindset of the 21st century has a lot of baggage and extra weight that comes with hearing that phrase, kingdom of God. It can be translated something more like, let's see, the realm or the domain or the territory of self-empowerment. And that one word, God, G-O-D, can literally be translated to self-empowerment with a capital S. It's like there's only one self, and you and I are individual expressions of the only one. So the fact that we get to breathe and move and think and have this discussion, we are self-empowered because there's only the one self making all of it available and possible right here and now. You have something?
Okay, so you're saying like in the original, I just want to kind of clarify that it was more of not a physical, but more of a spiritual, mental, non-physical kingdom.
Yes, that is exactly right. That is exactly right. And something that, another example of that was when there was a time when the ancient Hebrews didn't have a king. Only the other groups or nations or ethnicities of people in the area had kingdoms. But the ancient Hebrews didn't have a king. And the seer or the prophet of the time warned them that they didn't want to go down that road. But they thought they wanted to be like the rest of the others, and so they formed a kingdom. And it became very clear that even the way the kingdom is formed with its groups of people and kind of this hierarchy structure was still pointing to something within the human being. That there are all these layers to get to the basis of power. And the king and the queen are supposed to embody every living person and thing in the kingdom itself. And so in a way, strip away the layers, you have the organic thing. And it's like you strip away the layers of the kingdom, and what you should find in your core leadership is the essence of every person in the kingdom. Similarly, when they designed the temple, which came before the kingdom, obviously, or I don't know if that's obvious or not, but the temple was formed before the kingdom was, and it was the same idea. There was like an outer court that you could enter into, and there was like a certain type of altar and fire, and then there was an inner court, and then there was the most holy place, and you had to go further and further within to get to the pure place. And it was, again, just another three-dimensional example of what we're able to do, and some of us are saying, I can go there in an instant. So when he said the kingdom of God is within you, there it is again. It's another portrayal of the same idea. You can go within in an instant, and you can find that place, and it's a secret place that only you can access. No one can access it for you. So in fact, one of the Psalms says, those who abide in the secret place of the Almighty will abide under. How's it go? That's not right. Those who abide in the secret place. Oh, something like that. Something. That's the beginning of it. I can't remember the rest of it, but I think it's the first verse of Psalm 91. In fact, let me see if I can maybe pull it up. All of the ancient parables about the kingdom of God, they are so creative, and the more I learn, the more I'm astounded by how one man could come up with so many different ways of describing the same experience. One of them was like the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, something that's like right here, and when it grows, you have this plant and all these offshoots and all this variety, but it came from one organic seed, you know. So, one translation of that secret place says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." So that's one way of reading it, and I think the one that I was referring to.
It's really done. He dwelt in the secret place of the Most High.
Mm-hmm. Shall abide under the shadow of it. Yeah, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. So it's interesting how such timeless truths have been, packaged into a religious movement of sorts. And what humans do is we love to attach, and the ego gets involved. And so
Make it our way.
say that again.
Make it our way.
Make it our way. Yeah. We begin to add layers on top of of the original, right? Even the message itself had an original form, and we put on these other layers or these dogmas or these rules and say, oh, that means you have to do it a certain way, and you have to act and look a certain way, and since we live in such a divided world, we don't care if you use this message, but your kind should use the message in your own space, and our kind will use this message in our own space. And so now we're separate, and we'll even call it a different thing. We'll say it's Catholic or it's Protestant, or we'll say it's Baptist or Methodist, like, or yeah, sure, right? Any label we want to put on it. And I think our point here is that all of the division is just distraction from what's most true about who we are, and ends up taking away from the message, which is unfortunate because it's a great message and it's a really good experience. The experience of pure peace that knows no boundaries or division is, well, heaven on earth.
Awesome.
And if we could just get more of that instead of more Republican versus Democrat, or mask versus no mask, or who knows, right? It's
I was raised very Southern Baptist, church 5 days out of 7. We were there, I talked loud the whole, and the concept, and as even in Sunday school, we were taught a little Hebrew and all that, because you wanted to actually, they were dead serious, But this concept that the God was the self was never ever. I mean, never,
No.
But
Up here, right?
Separate place.
No, it's up here. Yeah.
and
On a throne.
but you have so many. It blows my mind because so many religions claim to want to go back, and especially the Judaism religion, do the original language. And I even had exposure to that as a small kid.
right.
You should try and get the original language, not go with King James because that was the King James trumped all.
Right.
But if you had so many people
Right.
trying to go back, why is it not more well known?
You know what? So I did a podcast on that question. So you might want to hear that. So my website is lancehoward.net, and there's a link that'll send you to all the podcasts, and one of them is titled Bible Redefined. So I speak to some of that, and it's a very complicated issue because, especially because of language, though. Language is really difficult. Even in the last 20 years, English has changed so much, and now we are literally saying and hearing and reinterpreting when we hear a word that used to mean something not so great or something bad, now meaning something good. Like you'll hear younger generations say, "Oh, that's sick." But they mean it's a good thing. This is some kind of good experience to have, right?
I know, right?
It's sick. So language is complicated, and especially when a lot of English comes from Latin and Greek, and the line of thinking is very divided. Whereas in the ancient Semitic languages like Hebrew and Aramaic, they had a more holistic view. And so, for example, the word for light also includes darkness, but in English we don't have a way to say that. So imagine trying to translate that word then. Like, how do you communicate to English speakers light and darkness in the same experience? It's the only way I could say it is, well, the sun creates a shadow. I did that earlier, right? That's a way for us to see it, how to see that reality. It's like, oh, okay, I get now how darkness and light work together. And actually, it's also interesting that in the beginning, this is Genesis chapter 1, right, where when all things were created, it said night and day were, let there be light. Sorry, let there be light. But the sun hadn't been created yet. So again, there's this, the light was created out of darkness. There was no light before. So again, the connection is there, right? There's this spectrum with light, and there's dark on one end and light on the other end, and some kind of mix of both in the middle. Were you going to say something?
Oh, it's just kind of going back to the point about language, because we had a team in Ravensroost that kind of dealt with process and different things, and the team has struggled for years with different things, but for me it kind of summed it up in this one meeting, which revolved around, it came down to the word facilitation.
Okay.
And some of the people in the group thought facilitation was when you sit down with two people and you're kind of helping them and facilitating a discussion amongst them. And that could also be conflict resolution, but you're working with this. And there was a whole another group that thought facilitation meant helping a group make the best decision that it can by facilitating a meeting.
Okay.
And those are two very different things. And there was like this horrible friction on the team about, and what, it wasn't until the group figured out that these people meant this, and that we were all using the same language, the same word for these totally different things, but it created this tension that was just really interesting, and it's just the word facilitation.
Right.
But it was such different connotations
to
different parties in that room. And once everyone got it, it was like an epiphany. It was like this huge moment.
It's like,
oh, what a relief.
Right.
And it wasn't really like they were, I don't know how to explain it, but that word really caused a lot of problems.
Right.
Just the one word.
That's very interesting. So for those who are listening, she was just sharing about how the word facilitation was used in a meeting, and one part of the group thought that the word was being used one way and the other part of the group was using it a different way, and that caused a lot of tension. And it took some time to realize that they were using the one term, facilitation, in two different ways, and that's why they couldn't come to a consensus or an agreement.
Exactly. And once we did, everyone was immensely relieved. It was,
Right. Yeah, that's a tough one, and it definitely, how we communicate it's very important, and how we read, how we interpret anything, I suppose, right? It's all about interpretation. Do I have the humility and or the wisdom to just assume that I may not quite understand and then ask the question? I may phrase it something like, I think I'm following you, but just in case, are you saying yada yada yada, And that's why, I'm getting to experience that here and now, where I have this microphone on and the listeners can't hear you, so I have to clarify for them, because they're like, wait, what's being said? I don't know what's going on. And so I get to practice, first of all, being a good listener, because I want to be able to reiterate it back to you, and hopefully you go, yeah, that's right. But even if you don't, yeah, even if I get it wrong, right, still the humility to ask the question and then get back on course is the most important part of that. A lot of relationships fail based around words and communication. Assumptions are definitely a part of that.
That's called active listening. When you, I think I heard you say.
There we go, being an active listener. Okay, right on. Yeah, and imagine not that we have to imagine, I'm sure we've all experienced, we may not always know what our own inner voice is saying and communicating to us, and let alone we want to try our best to understand the person next to us, the people we care about and the people we love. I'm learning more and more that I can't be an accurate support for anyone else if I don't know how to accurately support my own self. And if we don't have some kind of draw or call or practice to better understand ourselves, then what's going to really help me care about anyone else in a real way, right? It's not that I don't care, it's just I don't realize how maybe off the mark I am in my attempt to give them what's best. I may think I'm on the mark, like there's the point, I'm trying to get there, but I can't see that maybe I'm just off one little degree, which means when it gets to them, it's way to the left. Any other thoughts? That's all I have for the moment, I think, for today. But
Thank you.
It's really good to see all of you, and thank you for sharing and being a part.
I'm going to check out your podcast.
Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
thank you for that. I definitely will.
LanceHoward.net.
.net, LanceHoward.net. Thank you.